What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors sits down for what should be a routine interview, only to find himself under attack from a host determined to make the conversation about everything except his remarkable journey? What you're about to witness is the moment Michael J. Fox reached his breaking point on live television. And trust me, it unfolds in a way you won't see coming. Make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment below this. Story will leave you speechless. The stage was set for what producers envisioned as a heartwarming segment. Michael J. Fox, the legendary actor behind Back to the Future and Family Ties, was scheduled to appear on The View to discuss his latest advocacy work and upcoming projects. The audience buzzed with anticipation, and even the co-hosts seemed genuinely excited to welcome such an iconic guest. When Michael walked onto the set, applause erupted. He waved that familiar smile, lighting up his face as he made his way to the guest chair. Whoopi, Sarah, and Sonny all rose to greet him warmly. But Joy Behar's demeanor felt different, cooler, more guarded, a subtle tension in contrast to her colleagues' enthusiasm. "Michael, welcome back to The View," Whoopi began brightly. "It's always such a pleasure to have you here. You look fantastic." "Thank you so much for having me," Michael replied, settling into his chair with the effortless grace that had endeared him to millions. "It's great to be back with all of you ladies." The conversation began pleasantly. Sonny asked about his work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and Michael's face lit up as he spoke about advances in Parkinson's research. His passion was palpable as he described the progress being made and the promise of breakthrough treatments. "The science has advanced so much in just the past few years," he said, his voice brimming with optimism. "We're seeing promising results in clinical trials, and I truly believe we're on the verge of major breakthroughs in the next decade." Sarah leaned forward, clearly moved. "Your foundation has raised over $1 billion for research." "That's incredible, Michael. How does it feel to know you've made such a massive impact?" Michael deflected the praise with characteristic humility. "It's not about me. It's about the thousands of researchers, donors, and advocates who make this work possible. I'm just grateful to be in a position to amplify their efforts." Then Joy interjected. The tone shifted. "Well, Michael," she said, her voice sharp, instantly commanding attention, "let's talk about something else for a moment. I have to ask about some of the political positions you've taken over the years." The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances, caught off guard. Michael remained polite, though a subtle tension crept into his posture. "I'm not sure what you mean, Joy," he replied carefully. "I try to focus on health advocacy rather than partisan politics." Joy wasn't deterred. "Oh, come on, Michael. You've been vocal about certain issues. Some people might say you've used your condition to push a particular agenda." A hush fell over the studio. The audience sensed the discomfort. Whoopi seemed ready to redirect the conversation, but Joy pressed on. "Let's be honest," she continued, her tone increasingly confrontational. "You've received a lot of sympathy over the years because of your diagnosis. Some critics suggest you've leveraged that sympathy for political gain." Michael's jaw tightened, but he remained composed. "Joy, I think you're mischaracterizing my advocacy. When I speak about healthcare or research funding, it's because these issues affect millions, not just me." "But you have to admit," Joy shot back, "your celebrity and your condition give you a platform others don't have. And you've used it to support candidates and causes that some Americans disagree with." The tension in the studio was palpable. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Sonny looked down at her notes. Whoopi finally tried to intervene. "Joy, maybe we should focus on Michael's foundation work," she suggested diplomatically. But Joy was relentless. "No, I think this is important. Michael, you appeared in political ads. You've made statements about healthcare policy. You can't just hide behind your foundation when it's convenient. Michael's composure began to harden. His voice steady, but with an unmistakable steeliness. I'm not hiding behind anything. Joy, I'm using my voice to advocate for medical research and healthcare access. If you find that controversial, then we have very different ideas about what's important. What I find controversial, Joy retorted, is when celebrities think their personal struggles give them special authority to influence public policy. You're an actor, Michael, not a policy expert. The audience went silent. Even the camera operators seemed tense. Michael leaned back, hands clasped, clearly processing. Then, slowly, deliberately, he spoke. Joy, he said, controlled but firm. I've been living with Parkinson's for over 3 decades. I've worked with researchers, doctors, and policymakers around the world, Michael said, his voice calm but firm. I think that gives me at least some insight into these issues. Joy leaned forward, her tone aggressive. But that's exactly my point. You've turned your personal situation into a career. Some people might call that exploitation. The polite smile that had been on Michael's face disappeared. His eyes flashed with a quiet, controlled anger that few had ever seen from the usually gentle actor. Exploitation. He repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. Joy, I think you need to be very careful about what you're suggesting here. The other hosts exchanged alarmed glances. Whoopi placed a hand on the desk, as if ready to intervene physically. Sarah looked like she wanted to vanish entirely. But Joy, emboldened by what she seemed to perceive as weakness, pressed harder. I'm just saying what a lot of people are thinking. Michael, she said dismissively. You've built an entire second career on being sick. The foundation, the speaking engagements, the political endorsements, it's all tied to your condition. Michael's hands, steady throughout the interview despite his Parkinson's, clenched into fists. My foundation has funded research that's helped millions worldwide, he said, his voice rising slightly. If you think that's exploitation, then you clearly don't understand what we're trying to accomplish. Oh, I understand perfectly, Joy shot back. You've created this saint-like image of yourself, the brave. Celebrity fighting disease. Nobody's allowed to question it because you're sick. It's brilliant marketing, really? The audience gasped audibly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. It was clear Joy had crossed a line even her most loyal viewers found unacceptable. And let's talk about those political ads you did, she continued relentlessly. Standing there, shaking, making people feel sorry for you so they'd vote a certain way. Some might call that emotional manipulation. Michael stood abruptly. His chair rolled backward with a loud clatter. The studio fell silent, the hum of cameras the only sound. That's enough, he said, his voice carrying the full weight of 3 decades of public scrutiny and private struggle. Joy, I came here today to talk about hope, about research, about the future we're building for people who are suffering. But you've turned this into something ugly. I'm just asking the tough questions that other interviewers are afraid to ask, Joy protested. Isn't that what journalism is supposed to be about? Journalism. Michael laughed bitterly, the sound low and cutting. This isn't journalism, Joy. This is a performance. You're trying to create a moment at my expense, frankly. It's disgusting. Whoopi finally spoke. Michael, please, let's take a step back. No, Whoopi. Michael interrupted, his tone steel. I appreciate that you're trying to mediate, but Joy needs to hear this. You want to talk about exploitation? Let's talk about a talk show host who thinks attacking a guest with a chronic illness makes for good television. Joy's face flushed red. I'm not attacking you because you're sick, Michael. I'm questioning your methods, your motives. My motives. Michael's voice cracked with restrained emotion. My motive is to find a cure for a disease that affects over 10 million people worldwide. My motive is to give hope to families watching their loved ones deteriorate. What exactly are your motives here, Joy? The question hung in the air like a gauntlet. Joy shifted uncomfortably, perhaps finally realizing she had pushed too far. But her pride wouldn't let her retreat. My motive is to have an honest conversation. Without the usual celebrity worship, she said, though her earlier confidence had faltered. Celebrity worship. Michael shook his head in disbelief. Joy, I've been transparent about my condition for 3 decades. I've shared my struggles, my setbacks, my fears. I've let cameras follow me on my worst days so people could understand what this disease really looks like. And you call that exploitation? Sarah tried again to intervene. Michael, we all have tremendous respect for what you've accomplished, don't we? Michael turned toward her, his expression softening just slightly. Because your colleague here just suggested that I built my career on being sick, that I manipulate people's emotions for political gain. Is that the respect you're talking about? Joy couldn't stay quiet. I never said you built your career on being sick. You were already famous when you were diagnosed. Then what exactly are you saying, Joy? Michael asked, his voice steady but edged with controlled fury, the calm before a storm that had clearly been building for years. Michael turned sharply to face her, his eyes piercing. Because from where I'm sitting, sounds like you're suggesting that everything I've done since my diagnosis has been dishonest or self-serving. Joy tried to regain control. I'm saying you've used your platform in ways that go beyond medical advocacy. You've endorsed political candidates, taken positions on policy issues that have nothing to do with Parkinson's. Michael stepped closer to her side of the desk, his presence filling the entire studio. So what you're really upset about, he said, his voice low but resonant, is that I don't share your political views. This isn't about journalism or tough questions. It's about silencing a voice you disagree with. That's not true, Joy protested, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? Michael pressed. Because if this were really about accountability or transparency, you would have done your homework. You'd know that our foundation operates with complete financial transparency. You'd know that the research we fund is peer-reviewed and published. You'd know that every penny we spend is tracked and reported. Joy opened her mouth, but Michael continued without pause. But you didn't do that homework, did you, Joy? Instead, you chose to ambush me with accusations and innuendo. You thought you could score points by attacking someone with a chronic illness on national television. The studio fell silent, the only sound the hum of cameras. Michael's breathing was slightly labored, whether from emotion or his condition, but his voice remained steady and commanding. You know what the real tragedy is? He continued. There are researchers working 18-hour days in labs around the world, trying to unlock the mysteries of neurodegenerative disease. There are patients and families who need hope, who need to know someone is fighting for them. And instead of talking about that, using this platform to educate, to inspire, you've chosen to tear down the very efforts that might save lives. Joy's defensive posture faltered. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the gravity of her misstep. Michael, I think maybe we should. No, Joy. Michael cut her off firmly. You don't get to backtrack now. You wanted this conversation, so let's have it. You accuse me of exploiting my condition for personal gain. You suggested I manipulate people's emotions for political purposes. Those are serious accusations, and the audience deserves to hear you defend them. Joy looked helplessly around the studio, searching for support from her co-hosts or the audience. But the mood had shifted. Excitement had turned into uncomfortable silence and barely concealed disapproval. I was just trying to ask challenging questions, Joy said weakly. Challenging questions. Michael's voice rose with righteous indignation. A challenging question would be asking about research protocols or funding allocations. A challenging question would examine the ethics of celebrity advocacy or the responsibility that comes with having a platform. What you did was launch personal attacks disguised as journalism. Whoopi tried to mediate. Michael, I think what Joy was trying to get at. Michael raised a hand, cutting her off. Whoopi, I appreciate your loyalty, but there's no defending what happened here. Joy made a calculated decision to attack me personally, and she needs to own that. The camera captured Joy's face as confidence drained from it. Gone was the combative host who had dominated the first part of the interview. In her place sat someone realizing she had badly miscalculated. I never intended to attack you personally, she said quietly. But that's exactly what you did, Michael replied without hesitation. You questioned my integrity, my motives, my character. You suggested I built my advocacy work on deception and manipulation. How is that not personal? Sarah, who had been largely silent, finally spoke. Michael, I think everyone here recognizes the incredible work you've done and the impact you've had. Michael turned to her, a sad smile softening his expression. I appreciate that, Sarah, but the damage is done. Your show just broadcast to millions the suggestion that my life's work is somehow fraudulent or self-serving. How do you think that affects the families who depend on our research? How do you think that affects the donors who support our work? The weight of his words settled over the studio like a heavy curtain. For the first time, Joy seemed to understand the broader implications of her actions. I didn't think about it that way, she admitted reluctantly. That's the problem. Joy, Michael said, his voice carrying both anger and disappointment. You didn't think, Michael said, his voice steady but heavy with disappointment. You saw an opportunity to create controversy, to generate headlines, and you took it without considering the consequences. He walked back toward his chair. But instead of sitting, he reached for his jacket. The simple gesture carried a weight that reverberated through the studio. Wait. Michael, you don't have to leave, Whoopi said quickly. We still have time in the segment. Michael paused, slipping on his jacket, and looked at Whoopi with genuine respect. Whoopi, you've always been gracious to me, and I have nothing but respect for you. But I can't continue to sit here and pretend what just happened is acceptable. Turning toward the audience, his voice carried clearly across the studio. To everyone watching at home, the work we do at the Michael J. Fox Foundation isn't about me. It's about the brilliant scientists dedicating their lives to finding answers. It's about the patients volunteering for clinical trials, knowing they may not personally benefit, but hoping they can help others. It's about the caregivers who sacrifice everything for their loved ones. The audience began to clap softly, then louder, until the ovation became sustained. Many rose to their feet, showing their support for Michael and their disapproval of how he had been treated. Joy sat frozen, overwhelmed by the reaction. The other hosts clapped politely, though their discomfort was clear. The real tragedy here. Michael continued over the applause, is that we had a chance to talk about hope, about scientific breakthroughs, about a world without Parkinson's disease. Instead, we wasted that opportunity on manufactured controversy. He looked at Joy one final time. I've spent 30 years learning to live with this disease, and the last 25 working to ensure others won't have to. I've been transparent about my struggles, my successes, and my failures. I've opened my life to public scrutiny because I believe it serves a greater purpose. Joy finally found her voice, barely above a whisper. Michael, I'm sorry if I offended you, if I offended me. Michael shook his head slowly. Joy, there's no if about it. You did offend me. You offended millions fighting this disease. You offended the researchers working tirelessly to find a cure. And you offended the basic principles of respectful discourse. The studio fell silent as Michael stepped toward the exit. then paused, turning back one last time. "You know what's really sad about this whole situation?" he asked, his voice tinged with genuine disappointment. "I came here today excited to share incredible news about recent research breakthroughs. There are trials happening right now that could change everything for people with Parkinson's. There are new treatments on the horizon that could dramatically improve quality of life for patients and their families." He paused, letting the words sink in. But instead of talking about that hope, instead of inspiring people to get involved or support research, we spent our time on this. That's the real loss here. Without another word, Michael J. Fox walked off the set, leaving behind a stunned studio and a host who finally understood the magnitude of her mistake. The cameras continued rolling as Joy sat in uncomfortable silence. The audience's applause followed him, filling the studio as the show cut to commercial. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were circulating online, and Joy Behar found herself at the center of a controversy entirely of her own making. What did you think of Michael J. Fox's response to Joy Behar's attacks? Was he right to walk off, or should he have stayed to continue the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this.